Alors, bonjour à tous. Welcome everyone to this Canada FinTech Forum Off meeting. Bienvenue à tous à cette rencontre off du Forum FinTech. Alors, c'est un plaisir de vous retrouver aujourd'hui. La rencontre d'aujourd'hui aura lieu en anglais. Donc, on va passer dans la langue de Shakespeare. So, hi everyone. Thanks for being with us today. This is our last meeting of the fall season of the OFF Canada FinTech Forum meeting. So very glad to have all of you again with us today. We see people coming in, so we're going to let everyone have a little time to join as we have a full house today, a virtual one, of course. So just as a means of introduction, my name is Mathieu Cardinal. I'm Vice President of FinTech Development at Finance Montreal. I'm very glad to be here with you all this morning. This is a special one for me personally, as this is going to be my last meeting in my current function at Finance Montreal. I have accepted to take on a new challenge at Crisis in the wealth management space starting in January. So after over 7 years at Finance Montreal, I'm gonna hand the torch over to my colleagues. So Mathieu Paquette-Lambert and Simon Jacques, who are here today. I thank them. I thank also the panelists who have accepted our invitation. But it's been a great ride in building and strengthening this FinTech community here in Montreal and more broadly in Quebec and Canada. And it was thanks to you all who have joined us in this adventure that we did it together. So I want to thank you all again for being with us this morning. We have a thrilling panel about the modernization of payments in Canada. Lots of stuff to talk about, ISO 20022, the Links project. Expertus is with us also today, and of course, the folks at Paiements Canada who have gladly accepted to collaborate with us on the making of this panel and bringing us to update on their work and this fundamental piece of modernization of our payment system in the country. So without further ado, guys, I want to thank you all again, and I'll turn it over to my colleague Mathieu Paquette-Lambert, who's going to introduce us, our panelists today. Mathieu, over to you.
Thanks, Mathieu, and thanks for all you've done, in the last 7 years for the FinTech community of Canada and Montreal, building the Canada FinTech Forum, the Montreal FinTech Station. So it's been a great ride to build this with you, and thanks, for all those years. And we'll continue to, animate this community in 2021. As he said, this is the last one of the year. I'm Mathieu Paquette-Lambert. I'm Director of FinTech Development at Finance Montréal. So let me introduce you, our panelists today. So today we'll have a different format than you are usually used to in those events. So we'll have presentations followed by conversations. So first we'll have Ryan Grundy, who is lead of industry relations at Paiements Canada, who will present about an update of the modernization project of the payments infrastructure. After that, we'll have Charl Ackerman, who will present, who is policy head of policy. Principal policy of Paiements Canada, will present to us, the membership and access reform of the payment infrastructure. And finally, Cyrielle Chiron, who is head of strategic foresight at Paiements Canada, who will present some research about central bank digital currency. Between each of those presentations, we'll have 2 industry experts that will join us for a conversation. Our 2 industry experts today are Abdulah Tarazi, who is Chief Business Development at Expertus Technology, and my colleague Simon Jacques, who's Executive Advisor for Risk Management and Derivatives at Finance Montreal. So without further ado, I'll let Ryan take the floor to present, the update about the modernization. Ryan.
Merci beaucoup, Mathieu. Thank you very much for the introduction. And obviously, it's an honor, and we're on behalf of Paiements Canada, we're very appreciative of the opportunity to address your audience today, knowing that it's Mathieu Cardinal's final session. Amps up the pressure a little bit, so we'll be sure to bring our A game to make this a memorable one. But just to kick off proceedings, I'm not sure sort of what the level of familiarity with the audience is as far as Paiements Canada is concerned. So I'm going to take a few minutes just to do sort of a brief introduction as to who we are, what we do, and then I'll get into some of the aspects of our modernization program prior to handing it off to Abdulah to speak a little bit about some of the collaboration we've engaged in. So Paiements Canada, small but mighty organization. Common misconception is that we're a government organization. We are not. We are a public purpose nonprofit organization. We are funded by our members. Our members are 110 financial institutions who basically pay for use of our services. We are headquartered in Ottawa. We're approximately 240 employees with a satellite office in Toronto as well, which is where I'm located out of. And we're the type of organization that, candidly, if we're doing our job well, we kind of fly under the radar. You don't notice us too much. However, we endeavor to change that perception, obviously, with the implementation of some of our modernized platforms. The first of which will be coming in about Q3 of 2021, which I'll get to in just a moment. So just to talk a little bit about what we do now that we've covered who we are, Maud, if you want to switch to the following slide. Thank you very much. So we at Paiements Canada, we have received our mandate through an act of legislation, the Canadian Payments Act. And really the primary accountability that we have is to provide the essential payments infrastructure that underpins the Canadian economy. We do this primarily, well, right now, through the provision and maintenance of two systems, our ACSS system, Automated Clearing and Settlement System. That is the system which the majority of payments go through. It's our retail bulk system. Approximately 99% of our payments volume goes through this system. However, it only represents about 13% of the value. And the types of payments that go through this system would be sort of the check clearing, as well as electronic payments such as point of sale, bill payments. We do see approximately 33 million transactions going through this system a day, and we process approximately just under $30 billion worth of payments a day through the ACSS system. On top of that, we have our LVTS system, as Mitsu had indicated, that will be undergoing transformation as well. We'll be shifting to something that we call our link system, which I'll get to in just a moment. And that's really sort of the, maybe not the workhorse, but the vast majority of payments volume or funds amounts actually go through that system. We are processing approximately 40,000 transactions through that system on a daily basis, but we're pumping at about $190 billion per day through our large value transfer system. And what the large value transfer system does is it basically facilitates the transfer of funds between financial institutions. Obviously a lot has changed in 2020, and we're very proud at Paiements Canada to be able to say that one of the things we've been instrumental in assisting is the provision of financial assistance programs for pandemic relief as provided by the government. I'd mentioned earlier, we ordinarily see about $190 billion a day going through the LVTS system. It wasn't uncommon for us through the pandemic relief period to see almost $400 billion, so almost a doubling of payments volume going through that system as the Bank of Canada was pumping liquidity into the system for provision of financial relief for small businesses and Canadians across the country. So not only do we take great pride in underpinning the Canadian economy on a regular basis, but we also take great pride in the fact that we were able to basically act in a manner to assist Canadians through some of these challenging times associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is essentially the technological aspect of what we do at Paiements Canada. So that's providing the essential payments infrastructure. Another element that we're very active in is connecting a fluid and vibrant economy. And as had been indicated in the opening comments of this session, we really do also pride ourselves on our role as connectors and collaborators within the Canadian payments ecosystem. Even in terms of our modernization initiatives, this isn't something that we sat in a closed room and sort of hypothesized as to what the benefits to Canadians would be as a result of the delivery of our modernization systems. But we have embarked upon a robust series of engagements across the country within various industries in order to determine what the payments needs, the payment current pain points were, what the aspirations would be for modernization, and ways that we could basically meet those needs. So we do have a robust regimen of connecting not only with the financial institutions who are members, but also through stakeholders like yourselves. We have our Stakeholder Advisory Council comprised of 20 institutions that advise us on a regular basis, as well as through periodic consultation within the payments ecosystem. And it's not just about the delivery of our modernization systems, but we're also really geared towards improving the overall payments experience for Canadians in general. Other initiatives that we have going on currently is we've got check reduction program running in order to help eliminate the usage of checks, which can be somewhat burdensome from a reconciliation perspective, the cost associated with it. We're also working to improve the bill payment experience as well as the pre-authorized debit experience for Canadians in general. And so, you know, these are things that we involve ourselves in. It's not just about sort of the capital I innovation and the capital I initiatives. It's other things that we're looking at constantly in order to ensure that we're enhancing Canada's competitive position on the international landscape, as well as basically improving the payments experience for Canadians on the whole. So these are the types of things that you know, that we look at providing for Canadians in general. If we could go to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit about you know, what we do, which I'd already talked about. So in case the previous verbiage wasn't clear, here's a little summary just to take away. So I think we can skip to the next page, which talks a little bit about our modernization programs. Very exciting time for us at Paiements Canada. As I'd mentioned, we've been happy to sort of fly under the radar. Again, we're the type of organization, if we're doing our jobs properly, you don't know we're there. But again, looking to make a big bang commencing in 2021 in the delivery of, well, in the enhancement of our large value transfer system. LVTS will be transitioning to a system that we've called Links. I don't know if you'd like what we've done there, but we've chosen a fast animal that's indigenous to Canada. So it's got some elements of sort of domestic pride happening there, but we're also implementing a brand new system, which will be the real-time rail. And our goal with all of the modernized systems that we'll be delivering is to basically provide a modern payment system, fast, flexible, secure, and most importantly, very importantly to this audience, is that it'll basically enhance Canada's competitive position. So the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of the key features of the modernized platforms that we uncovered in part of our consultation with the ecosystem. Obviously, the first two that you see there are the ones that are primary importance to both the you know, the large corporations as well as the end consumers that we spoke to, and PayTechs as well. The opportunity to sort of have faster payments, which is obviously vital to small business, especially as highlighted through the pandemic. You know, being able to manage cash on a real-time basis is something that, quite frankly, is essential to the survival and competitive position of Canadian companies. And then the data-rich, the enhanced data remittance that will be provided through the implementation of the ISO 20022 standard. And so ultimately with ISO 20022, the benefits that we've uncovered there would not only be obviously the opportunity to streamline internal processes through the automated reconciliation of payments, but also the opportunity that would exist through enhanced business analytics, looking at applying AI to itemize transactions in such a way to help organizations understand better things like seasonality, regionality in terms of sales. Again, at Paiements Canada, we're providing the plumbing, if you will. We're providing the infrastructure, but what we look to do through the implementation of our modernized systems is to basically enhance participation for organizations such as yourselves to bring the full magic of innovation to bear to our payment systems. Next slide. We'll talk a little bit about, you know, current state to future state, and I'll get into some of the timing here as well. As I'd mentioned, we've got two systems currently through the LVTS and the ACSS systems, which is current state. We will be transitioning to modernizing both the LVTS, which will become Links, and the ACSS systems. But the sort of key area of interest for us right now is the implementation of Canada's first true real-time rail system, which we are calling the RTR for real-time rail. The Links system will be delivered in 2021, in approximately Q3 of 2021, and everything is going according to plan there. So we look forward to cutting the ribbon on that system in Q3 of next year. And then the real-time rail is scheduled for delivery in Q2, Q3 of 2022. Both of these systems will basically be enabling the ISO 20022 standard, which will be implemented in 2022 on both systems. So we're looking very forward to, you know, not only providing a better payments experience for Canadian corporations and citizens through faster payments and enhanced data remittance, but also through, and Charl will talk about this a little bit more as well, through mobilizing the innovation layer represented by a lot of the participants on the call today, by allowing you to take a greater role in providing competitive services and overlay services on top of the RTR that will really bring, you know, end benefits to Canadians in general. So that wraps up my my intro piece. The next slide talks a little bit about getting involved with Paiements Canada. I would highly recommend you visit our site, www.paiements.ca, fairly intuitive. On that site, we have a lot of information in regards to not only our modernization initiatives, but a lot of access to thought leadership pieces, to white papers, to research, some of which Cyrielle will present later on today. And then, of course, as Mathieu had mentioned on the next slide, I'd be remiss in my duty if I didn't provide a little plug for the summit, which will be taking place, unsurprisingly, surprisingly virtually this year, between May 31st and June the 4th. So please, I invite you, as always, visit payments.ca for additional information in regards to Payments Canada and what we're up to. And then please also at thesummit.ca some information in regards to our virtual conference, The Summit, which we hope to see many of you at. So that wraps up, my brief introductory piece. I'll pass it over to you, Simon, to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for your part. Before we get into the conversation part of this presentation, and since I guess the general idea behind having this presentation as well is to highlight the fintech part of this modernization project and relative importance of fintech as well. Hence the participation of Expertus to this webinar, and so I'll introduce Abdulah and Abdulah Tarazi as on behalf of Expertus. To share, some thoughts and experience, because Expertus has been to a certain degree quite involved in this project, and we're very, very happy about that. So any thoughts from your part, Abdulah, on this project?
Yeah, well, thanks Simon, thanks Finance Montréal for having us here today. I'll just introduce Expertus too. Maybe not everybody's familiar with us. So Expertus is a Montreal-based fintech. We're part of the Finance Montreal's fintech station as well. And we've been working with Payments Canada for quite a while. We've been working with them on many different entries. So what we do at Expertus is we develop payment solutions for banks and corporates, but we also are SWIFT experts. We host the one of only 2 SWIFT service bureaus in Canada. And in that, with that expertise, we've been working with Payments Canada to help them, support through their SWIFT connectivity, which is the network that underlines the large value transfer system, so the LVTS and the newer link system that Ryan was talking earlier. So we've been working with Payments Canada on their previous system, and we've been working with them along with their systems integrator to implement the new SWIFT interface for that will support the links application as part of the modernization. So we've been really heavily involved there, but other parts of the relationship. So that is really working with them on modernization, but we've also working to help FIs, so FIs that are members to Payments Canada, to adapt to leverage the new features that Payments Canada has been establishing as part of that modernization to be able to develop new features, new functionality for their consumers as well. And last but not least, we're always listening and talking with Payments Canada as part of those consultations. So they are very vocal. They're always looking to, so Payments Canada is always looking to go and get feedback from the community. So we're always there as well as part of those consultations to make sure that we voice our concerns. We bring in the information we try to grab from other fintechs that we talk to, from other paytechs that we talk to, and we bring that information back to Payments Canada. So that's really our relationship with them and the way, and this is not something that was built in one day. We've been working at that for quite a while. And so Ryan, I love the presentation that you've made, and I just want to go back on one item, which is the vision that you presented, the vision for Payments Canada to provide a modern payment system, fast, flexible, secure, promotes innovation. And I think for many of our viewers, that really aligns with the soul of what a fintech is. So that really aligns with exactly what every single fintech out there is looking to do. They're looking to get faster elements, more innovative. So how do you see the role of a fintech with Payments Canada? So where do you see fintechs that will come in and participate? And that kind of as well answers one of the questions that's coming from our audience today, talking about how are you looking to promote innovation and bring them in? So I'll let you kind of answer that.
Thank you, Abdulah. Excellent question. I saw that in the questions as well. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to address that. So at the end of last month, the end of November, we basically announced that we'd secured the services of VocaLink to basically provide the clearing and settlement. And so with that done, we've got the foundation very well laid in terms of the the actual construction of the system. Throughout the course of 2021, what we'll be doing is basically enhancing, our presence and looking at the, reaching out within the community in order to sort of advertise the establishment of some standardized APIs to allow for organizations to look at competitive or overlay services to provide for the RTR. One of the key elements is sort of that open element of it that would basically enable greater participation and allow organizations such as the ones on the phone today to sort of look at testing various products and services that would help to tap into the power of the RTR to deliver end benefits to both businesses and Canadian consumers alike. And so, we don't pretend to be the magicians. We don't pretend to be the visionaries necessarily. As mentioned, we're going to provide the plumbing, but what we need to do, what's vital for us to bring the magic of real-time rail to life, is to basically ensure that there's a place for paytechs and fintechs to engage, to basically innovate, to interact with our systems in such a way so as to bring value-added services to the Canadian payments ecosystem. So again, it's vital for us to maintain these lines of communication, and obviously, forums such as this for us to engage and connect with the community are essential to us in moving those efforts forward.
Great. Well, as the title says, this is a lot about fintechs and the goal in talking about this project as well is to share this with the fintech community. And one important part of that project as well is to facilitate the onboarding or the participation of fintechs in this new payment ecosystem. So Charl, I'll turn this over to you to give us an update on the access and membership reform of this very interesting project.
Thanks very much, Shimon. As you said, this part of the presentation is discussing where the rubber hits the road, really. So we're looking at the other part of Paiements Canada modernization. And, Ryan spent a lot of time discussing the new systems that we are building. Whilst those are a key priority, at the same time, Paiements Canada being a creature of statute, the Canadian Payments Act itself needs to be modernized. We can flip on to the next slide, which will be great. So for most on the call, you probably will be familiar with an acronym, RPOF, or the Retail Payments Oversight Framework. And that is a piece of legislation that the Department of Finance is running with at this point in time to regulate the likes of FinTechs and the non-financial institution payment service providers that are in Canada. And we see this as a key piece of legislation that is required to bring about that broader participation in your own right on Paiements Canada's systems. The challenge for us, unlike the building of the real-time rail or links, for instance, is that this project is not in our hands. This project is in the hands of the Department of Finance. And we are playing a supporting role where we are really providing that of the view trenches to the Department of Finance on how Paiements Canada's membership needs to be amended. So just looking at some of the timelines here, as most of you would know, RPOF was presented to Canada, I think, in 2019, but we are waiting for it to be officially tabled in Parliament. And we're hopeful that will occur in Q1 next year. COVID hasn't helped with the bringing into fruition of the Retail Payments Oversight Framework, with finance pivoting its focus on, COVID relief measures and really jumpstarting the economy. But given the fact that we're getting to hopefully that light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, we are hopeful that finance will start looking at items such as the Retail Payments Oversight Framework. Anecdotally, I'm sure most on the session today would be aware that open banking raised its head again, and we see open banking and RPOF sort of joined at the hip. So we're hopeful Q1 2021, we'll see RPOF. And what we know from the Department of Finance is that will be shortly followed by a public consultation on membership reform for Paiements Canada. And really, what we are hoping is that as soon as, or as close to the deployment of the RTR in 2022, we will get, the legislative reform in place in the Canadian Payments Act, where we will see the likes of the Retail Payments Oversight Framework entities being eligible members to become members in Paiements Canada. This is key because without membership, there won't be participation or direct participation by the RPOF entities on our system. So, RPOF and amending the Canadian Payments Act is critically important to us because we see it as a whole. The modernized RTR systems with the ISO 222 message framework, and also the membership in place to allow that open and broader risk-based access to our systems. You'll see that there's potentially a delay, and what we're doing is we're also cognizant that the reality is, because of the impact of COVID, that RPOF will in all likelihood only come into fruition roughly a year after the RTR comes into play. We have, during the course of this year, in order to mitigate that delay, been exploring with the ecosystem alternative access options for non-members to participate on Paiements Canada systems. But the reality of that is that that type of alternative access, whether it is a form of sponsorship or the like, would need to happen hand in hand with our existing members. I'm sure those on the line would be cognizant and appreciate that this is really a balancing of efficiency and providing that opportunity for broader access, but at the same time mitigating risk, preventing systemic risk, and ensuring that a national asset continues to function 24/7, 365 without any problems. So we can jump onto the next slide. So with that in mind, we've been doing a lot of thinking on how do we evolve and modernize Paiements Canada's membership structure. And as most of you would know, the Retail Payments Oversight Framework is a functionally based type of legislation that looks at the activities that payment system actors perform in the ecosystem. And the sort of 5 high-level activities that RPOF focuses on look at the provision and maintenance of a payment account, payment initiation, authorization and transmission, which really looks at the transmission of payment messages, holding of funds, and the sort of nuts and bolts clearing and settlement. And if we look at those 5 activities, if we were to look at those that are really important for Paiements Canada, it would be items 2, 3, and 5: payment initiation, authorization and transmission, and clearing and settlement. And those activities, if they occur over Paiements Canada systems, would need to be factored within our future membership construct. If we flip to the next slide, we've been spending a lot of time over the last year really unpacking how should our membership framework look in order to accommodate future members such as the FinTechs and the PSPs. And as you'll know, we will have 3 systems. We'll have the real-time rail, we'll have the high-value system or links, and the batch system, which is ACSS or SOE in the future. But if we break those down and we look at the generic activities that we see in the payments ecosystem, having RPOF in mind, what we are saying is that in the future, membership would be open to any regulated entity, and that would be the traditional entities that we see today, the financial institutions. We'll then also have the RPOF payment service providers that will be eligible members. We've got a couple of others listed there, such as designated FMIs or credit union locals. And then the question is, well, depending on what activity that entity chooses, what type of member will they become? So if we've broken it into sort of 3 buckets of potential activities. So if we move into the red bucket there, which is titled clearing and settlement, you'll see there that the activities of being a settlement participant or a settlement agent would be open to anyone. But the one caveat being that in order to perform that function, you would need to have a settlement account with the Bank of Canada, right? If we then expand it open a little bit broader from that, we have this concept of the exchange participant. So those entities that would only be interested in either payment initiation or just exchanging payment messages. And then broader than that, something that we are contemplating is, do we create another participant category to cater for those organizations that aren't necessarily involved in the traditional activity of clearing and settlement, but they perform on the periphery of the payments value chain. So they're connection service providers, or they provide some sort of competitive service. But as the call out there says, this is still under construction. What I can say is that things are looking positive in our discussions with the Department of Finance. We've moved them from this idea of a separate category of member for the PSPs to the concept of, if you're a member and you become a member and you can meet the requirements of being a member, you should be rubbing shoulders with the members that we have today. And I'll leave it on that. That's really an update on where we are with membership reform. We're hammering the pots, as they say, and we'll continue to do so to make sure that this happens as soon as possible.
Well, okay. Well, thank you very much, Charles, for this update, sharing this information. With all this, there's a lot of technical stuff in there and questions to be discussed. Maybe the recent appointment of Michael Sabia at the finance department will be a positive turn to getting this forward. We'll see. He has quite a reputation there. How would is there this is quite complex, and for a fintech to enter and to participate in that, is there a preferable way? Is there going to be a sandboxing approach, which is going to be built to facilitate integration of new players? As we know that the incumbents, being the financial institutions, they have, I would say, probably the upper hand on being present. They have a global view of all of this, which is moving forward. Is there really any place for smaller players to get involved into that?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Simon. And as I said in the presentation, most of this year has been spent testing with the ecosystem. A lot of time has been spent with payment service providers and the fintech community. First of all, to inform them on these changes that are occurring, and also to really get their views of what is important out there. We can't sit at Paiements Canada and build out a future membership, a straw model, without understanding the needs and the business requirements of the paytechs out there. And really the place that we want to get to is a future where Paiements Canada's membership is reflective of the ecosystem and not just reflective of a portion of the ecosystem. So that being said, to answer your question, we see it as a journey, not just once the laws are changed and the systems are operational, do we engage with this part of the ecosystem. We would like to walk hand in hand so that when we get the green light, everyone knows what is expected of them and they have the ability to participate.
Great. Open for the questions. Abdulah, do you have something you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually jump in as well on a question that's coming from the public as well. talking about, we're opening the networks up to new members, new participants. Obviously, it has risk associated with it. There's, we need to add security to detect for fraud and stuff like this. So and again, implementing those or adding them as requirements requires, for those new members to have capital investment within their infrastructure. So where does it stand? Where does Payments Canada stand in terms of what are the requirements? What is Payments Canada providing as part of those, central systems to say, hey, this is something that maybe Payments Canada is covering to minimize the necessity for capital investment. So where do you stand here around fraud, around security for new members, participation, and about the requirements that are established for each to become a member?
Yeah, great question, Abdulah. And again, it's not a straightforward answer. As I said earlier, a lot of this hinges on the retail payments oversight framework. So for us in the broader ecosystem, having that regulation in place, which talks to these are your regulatory requirements as a new participant, really is the cornerstone of that future participation. From there, Payments Canada is responsible for the participation requirements for each of those systems. And in addition to that, looking at the option of centralized services that can be utilized by these new members in the future, we are making progress around the idea of a centralized fraud service, which will be at the use of these new members. And all of that together needs to create the correct risk framework that balances the ability to provide that innovation and competition, but at the same time safeguards the average Canadian out there that is going to be using these systems. But again, we are desperately waiting for RPOF because that, as I said, is cornerstone to this discussion.
So either Charl or Ryan, we have a question which pertains to a certain extent to the international comparison of our system, versus I could say our peers. How do we compare with this modernization? I mean, there used to be a time where we could work within our frontier and just go about our business. Nowadays, it's a very integrated economy and mostly on payment as well. So where does that put us in terms of comparison with other countries?
Sorry, I'll start. Charl, you can sort of add to that if I miss anything. I mean, I guess in typical Canadian cultural fashion, we're kind of on a slow and steady wins the race type of pace here. One of the benefits of not being first is you can take a look at regimes that have preceded us, learn lessons, and apply those to our experience as well. And so we're keeping a close eye on regimes that have preceded us. Australia, obviously, the one that most recently did so, is one that we're keeping a close eye on. Candidly, our focus for the immediate term is to basically get the rail implemented domestically, after which point, obviously, we'll be looking at cross-border interoperability, which will be, down the road, further than 2022. But obviously, in terms of modernization, it's definitely part and parcel with our aspirational state. And Charl, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Ryan, and just to echo that, the benefit of having other international counterparts a little bit further down the road on this journey is that we can learn from their mistakes there have been, and really the intent is beyond just the systems. From a regulatory perspective, is to build a first, world-class regulatory framework that, once it goes live, you're comfortable that we're not going to have to do a double turn on some of the regulations, which then can cause issues down the track. So we really want to make sure that once the systems go live, the laws are in place, the ecosystem can go on with its business. And as Ryan said at the get-go, payments is sort of like the plumbing. If you're not aware of us, then our job is done, and we want to get to that point.
Yeah, well, I suppose, developing new technology when you're a fintech, be it, for example, a stable coin or, another solution, has potential downside. I gather for Paiements Canada and the Canadian payment system to develop new technology, you really want to get it right. You don't want to fast forward things and realize to a certain point that you've done something you shouldn't have done. I think at this point, the topic of digital currency becomes kind of an interesting subject, and as I just mentioned, developing it from the point of view of a central banker for say the Canadian currency versus developing a stable coin or a token has a different perspective. Cyrielle, I think I'll turn this over to you, and so you can enlighten us with your knowledge about that specific topic.
Thank you. Well, I want to start the knowledge. So we're not the central bank, we're not the Bank of Canada. So we're not the one who are implementing, but we are looking at it with the purpose of education, because we have a duty of educating, the ecosystem about payments. So this is what we've been doing. So if we go into the next slide, please. In the next 10 minutes, I am going to share some information that we have from a mini-series that we just launched on our website, which is looking at CBDC and trying to see, how we can educate the market so that everybody can be ready when CBDC is coming to Canada. And it's not something that is going to come tomorrow, but it's important for us to all be aware of it. So I'm going to share some information on the fundamentals and a little bit on retail CBDC, because this is the key of what the Bank of Canada is focusing on. And we are going to have other information coming up on our website in the next quarter or so. So if we go into the next slide, I think it's important to understand what is central bank money, because I think this is the start. So I'm not going to go through all the slides, but very quickly, central bank money, it's a liability issued by a central bank, so in Canada, the Bank of Canada, in form of cash or coins for the general population to access, or in form of reserves for the financial institutions to access. And there are three functions, typically three functions. The one is like a unit of account, so very important to understand that, a store of value, and a medium of exchange. And why central bank money is important? When, just to summarize, it helps with the economic stability of a country. So now that we have this in mind, this is what central bank money is. If we go into the next slide, I'm going to explain what is central bank digital currency, or CBDC as we call it. So basically it's the same, it's a digital addition to a central bank liability, or the Bank of Canada liability, and it can be wholesale as reserve, or retail as tokens, as cash and coin for the retail side. So there's two sides, the wholesale and the retail. And the key question that everybody is asking, so what is CBDC versus another crypto, digital currency, stable coin, so central note? So just to explain, a cryptocurrency is privately, issued and not pegged to a fiat currency. So like Bitcoin, for example. A stable coin, which I believe most of you are more aware of, it is pegged to a fiat currency, but through use of intermediaries and banknotes or coins like central bank notes. So it's definitely, a fiat currency and physical form of it, which we all have, most of us have in our pockets, but it provides complete, anonymity. Like we all know that we can give cash to somebody without being able to trace it. So the loss of anonymity factor for CBDC can help for the underground economy or provide data for monetary policies decisions. So that's something we need to take into account. So if we go into the next slide, I'm going to look at what is retail CBDC in itself. So retail CBDC definitely hands on to take on the physical function of cash, right? Remember we're saying like in terms of retail is cash and coins, that's going to be that, but digitally. Why? Well, we know that cash has been declining for a while. So 40% in the last 5 years, if you go on our website and read our research called CPMT. So that's not something that is insignificant. It's been a trend we've been seeing for a while. And with COVID, it definitely accelerated further. So this is something that central banks globally are looking into because they want to make sure that the people who are relying on cash can still function. And also, as you all know, there is the rise of stable coins globally that is coming into place. So not at all different levels, but there is something that they are monitoring because they are wondering, we need to keep pace with the trends of the future. And this is not something that we can create overnight. So we need to start doing this now and looking at how we can implement it into a payment system or an economy of a country. So the Bank of Canada is also looking into it. So there are the 4 or 5 objectives that a retail CBDC needs to have to successfully supplement cash. So credit risk-free money, that's important. It's like cash doesn't have any interest rate attached to it. Always on functionality. If we talk about something digital, what do we do if there is a clash and somebody in the remote area cannot access it? So it has to be always on. Universal access is also something very important because today everybody literally is accepting cash. People who don't accept cash is because they don't want to, not because they cannot accept cash. So this is something that is important. The degree of privacy that I mentioned before. So anonymity remains a key driver of cash use. Think about the underground economy. So this is something that the people who are implementing and looking at how CBDC could be created needs to take into account. And we need to drive, the other thing is drive innovation in the financial services offering and stimulate competition. So this is another thing that needs to be taken into account. So now that we know what a retail CBDC is, if we go into the next slide, there is a very quick potential economic impact that we need to take into account, or we as an ecosystem need to take into account. The increase of competition, as I mentioned earlier, and making sure we can have opportunity for new entrants, that's important to take into account. The other one is remuneration and whether a CBDC, pays interest or not. This is something that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And I'm not saying it will or it will not. This is something that everyone is thinking about. And the last one is adverse market impact. So when you have always new innovation, new market entrants, there is understanding the impact it could have on the market is important. You need to understand demand. It's not because you build something that people are going to use it. So really take that into account. And we are running some research separately to assess how Canadians are reacting to it. And newsflash, they don't understand it. So just saying it now. And also, understanding how it could work with the banking system we have today in Canada and understand, the supply of bank loans. So all those are different aspects that need to be thought of when we think about the impact of a CBDC. If I go into the next slide, there is 2 slides that it's international, that's thinking about how a CBDC could be designed. And this is the same for wholesale or retail, but let's focus on retail. So it could be centralized versus decentralized. So centralized meaning like the central bank, so Bank of Canada, keep tracks of all transactions. They're aware of everything. They are a central role that they play in the transaction verification. They can see all market activity like centralization versus decentralized. So they use, a decentralized transaction verification. So there's a lot of chats about if you should be on the DLT or not. So there's a lot of thinking around this. And the central bank will not have full access to the market activity. It's going to be another entity that will have. There's also other 2 aspects that have been discussed, which is account versus token. So with account, the central bank take on the qualities of a commercial bank. So you have a bank account literally with the Bank of Canada, and then they do the KYC, they do the account creation, AML, etc. So everything is into the Bank of Canada. or token. It's the same system that we will have today with a physical banknote. So the central bank distributes the CBDC, so the current market financial structure is the same, to FIs and or other partners, because that's also something that is being considered. And those partners are responsible for the full consumer-facing operations, like it's happening today with cash. So that's the two design considerations that taking into account. Now with that, if we go into the last slide, there is a different ways of distribution models. And all of this impact I was talking about will be depending on the design considerations and our distribution model. So there are three ways that have been discussed internationally, and this information is from March. And after the summer, they were also having some discussions on changing this a little bit, but let's think like we are in March. So there's three ways. The one is like indirect CBDC. So in any single case, central bank is issuing the CBDC. Indirect, they give it to a financial institutions, as I mentioned, like it's kind of a token base, and then the financial institutions or the partners is giving it away. The direct is the same. Central bank is in the middle and managing the distribution model, like having an account, or the hybrid, or sometimes we call it synthetic CBDCs. Like there's different ways. That's the same. That's the one where you have a third provider in the middle and then managing everything else. So that's what I have in terms of explaining what a CBDC is, and I appreciate that might be a lot of information and a little bit complex type of concept. But if you go on our website, we do have different series that explain this a little bit more in detail, and we're always happy to have conversations about it.
Well, thank you very much, Cyrielle. I think the good news is we're working on a central bank currency, digital currency as well. We've seen sort of a race to the start line with various central banks working towards implementing a central bank digital currency. How do we see, we know as well, if we manage or we look at this from a headline perspective, we know that Libra will be launching probably its first scaled down version in January. So how do we reconcile the two? Is this a menace, or is this something that we should embrace and complement, or should we really push forward to develop our own central bank digital currency to, I would say, counteract or countervene the potential market that Libra could take on a global scale? So
first of all, we're not the central bank, so I'm always going to say that. So the central bank is looking at it as a contingency plan. Difficult English words. So they are into it in terms of all of that to make sure that the stability, as I said, like their key role is to make sure that the economy is stable, economically speaking. So it's something that they are working on, and I think I personally think we should develop, because it's something that it's looking towards the future, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. And as anything that we were talking about in the earlier discussions, we need to make sure we do it right. So we need to take the time to do it right. Now, in terms of Libra coming or not, as I said earlier, it's not because we're building something that people are going to use it. So understanding, market adoptions and how Canadians or any other people globally would be using it, it's very important. And so far in the research that we've been doing, there is, and I'm doing this on top of my head, like I think it's around 75% of Canadians that just don't have no clue about what digital currency is. When you talk about digital currency, Bitcoin comes because Bitcoin is the trendy name that everybody knows, but doesn't necessarily understand what it is. So it's important for us as institutions to be ready to understand and to make sure that we protect the Canadians, and we're still also innovative, but it's not because it's coming tomorrow that everybody is going to use it tomorrow. So that's more what a message I want to share, but it doesn't mean we don't have to ignore it. So.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Abdulah, before we move on to over to you.
Yeah, I'd like to actually, Cyrielle, you, in your position as head of research at Strategic Foresight, I do have a question that's really on my mind. So I'm going to be putting you on the spot there. So Canada's, the Canadian banking system has always been seen as, as a great banking system, as really a model for others to replicate. But now with RTR open banking, where we're lagging a little bit behind, or to say it nicely, we're learning from everybody's mistakes. And ISO 20022, we're kind of going along with the whole world, kind of establishing across the world. What do you see the next big thing where Canada can reestablish itself as kind of innovator, pioneer? Is it by establishing a new digital currency? Is there other items that you guys see that we should be looking at that's going to be coming in the next few years? So I'll leave it to you to kind of tell us a little bit about the future of the banking industry.
So everyone is asking me about the future. So I want to say, I don't know the future, but I want to say that we are in one of the leading countries, who are doing payments. It's not because we are looking around that it means that we're, just sitting there and doing nothing. I think it's pretty smart approach to sit, to make sure we work globally together. So a CBDC is not going to happen tomorrow. As you see, how long it takes to do a payments infrastructure is not something that is going to happen, but making sure that we are sitting at the table when those conversations are happening globally, it's very important, and we are. So I think it's something to keep in mind. Every country has different level of regulations, so we can't really compare. But in the next big thing, it's what we were mentioning earlier. It's like everything which is around cross-border, that will be making sure that things are connecting internationally, because I'm not going to say the word, I'm going to say it, interoperability. This one it's so much struggle to say it, but that's really, really important with everything and anything. And to do that, it's not going to happen overnight. And cross-border is very important. And as I said, having a place on the table to be able to influence, it's very, very important. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have everything ready first. And this is what we are doing. And I think we can pretty be proud of our country in the international level, in the international scene.
So Cyrielle, just to add on that, and it puts you a bit on the spot, and mind you, we're actually taping this. How far do you think we are from issuing a central bank digital currency, if any?
Oh, that's the thing. It's not that I want to divert that question. I actually don't know, because I don't work for the Bank of Canada, but I can tell you that they are working on it, and it's not something they're going to do tomorrow, and they're taking the right amount of time to make sure that it's going to be the right thing. So I know they are releasing a lot of statements and research to make sure they move along. I know they're connecting as well with the ecosystem, because they're connecting with us. So I really encourage to use this bridge of communication, because they are really keen in making sure the system is the right for the country. I would have done, I would be on the spot. I would have
well, Abdulah, do you have any other questions, or maybe we can take a question from the participants?
No, I love it. I actually like when you're suggesting interoperability. It brings back what Ryan kind of, everything about modernization. So we are, with modernization, with a different system, moving on to ISO 20022. We're talking about interoperability with SWIFT and the cross-border and all that, moving to ISO 22. Across the world, going towards a standard that is all about interoperability. So absolutely, that's a great message to hear.
Yeah, I just want to say we are on the right track. We're doing all the right things. If we're modernizing the system, whatever Charl was talking about RPOF, that everything is on the right track. It is not things that are going to happen overnight. So the last word would say we definitely are on the right track to make sure we are in the international scene and a competitive player.
Well, as I mentioned a bit earlier, I think that the great news is we're actually working on it. It's very important we do. Taking our time to do it the right way is very important as well, because I gather that downside of taking a bad decision, specifically when we're talking about a national payment scheme and as well a digital currency. I can only imagine how things could go wrong for a central banker, and eventually looking for a job on LinkedIn. So I guess. So I mean, there's but maybe a minute or a minute and a half left in this session. I know Mathieu has a few words to say for the next session. Many questions still on the Q&R. Unfortunately, we cannot necessarily get into. Well, I want to thank everyone to submit yourselves to this session with us, and appreciate the time you do so. Mathieu, I'll just send it over to you.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks to the audience for being here today. Thank you, Ryan, Cyrielle, Charl, and Abdulah as well. It's always great to collaborate with you guys. To the audience, we'll be back at the end of January with new events, new content. In the meanwhile, you can always rewatch or watch the last events that we did in a virtual way from September to this one. We also have the $1 Million Startup podcast series that we produced this fall. It's a reality show type podcast where we follow 20 startups that are competing for $1 million investment. It's a pretty unique podcast series, so you might want to check it out. It's available on Spotify and all the popular podcast platform, as well as on $1millionstartup.tech website. So again, thank you all for supporting us, in this particular year where we had to move all of our events, in a virtual way. We are really looking forward to see you once again at the Espace DPQ, where we will restart to hold our events as soon as it's possible. But, for the beginning of 2021, we'll be back in a virtual way as well. You'll receive the invitations shortly. So thank you very much. Happy holidays to all, and we'll see you in 2021.
Great.
Thank you.